After years of teaching, I'm tired of explaining how to read Chinese numbers, even to advanced students. So I decided to make one video that covers 99% of everything. You already know Chinese numbers, right? I mean, even my shabby little channel has a video teaching you how to count from 1 to 10. But do you actually know how to read numbers in real life, like sports scores, business reports, GDP growth, percentages, or even everyday bragging? Well, that's exactly what we are going to learn today. Now, beginners, you don't have to finish this entire video. Feel free to stay for the first half and come back later when you are ready. Intermediate and advanced learners, research shows that language learners naturally process numbers through their native language first. Well, at least that applies to me. That's why even advanced students often hesitate when reading large numbers in Chinese. So, a little extra practice never hurts. Before we begin, let's warm up with a football score from a Norway to Brazil football match. Can you read it in Chinese? 挪威以2-1击败巴西。比赛。Structure is very simple. Number plus 比 plus number. Again, 挪威以2-1击败巴西。Before reading big numbers, let's first understand how Chinese numbers are built. Chinese numbers are actually very logic. There are only two things you need. First, the digital words 0 to 10. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And don't forget this special one, 2. We will talk about it in a minute. The second building blocks is place values 10, 百, 千, 万, 亿. That's really all you need. Chinese numbers follow a very simple pattern. Digital plus place values. Once you understand this rule, even very large numbers become surprisingly easy. Here is the biggest difference between Chinese and English. English change units every 3 zeros. 1,000, 1 million, 1 billion. Chinese doesn't. Chinese changes units every 4 zeros. 10, 100, 1,000, then 1, which equals 10,000. After another 4 digits, you got 100 million. This is probably the hardest concept for English speakers, but the Chinese speakers naturally say it like 3, 4, 6, 8, 7, 5, 9, 2, 1. Every 4 digits, once you return your brain, everything becomes much easier. Now let's see how Chinese numbers are actually built. Remember the pattern, digit plus place value. 46, 212, pretty straightforward. Now let's jump to something much bigger. Instead of reading from left to right like English, we divided it into 4-digit group first. 346 million becomes 3亿 then 4687万 finally 5921 put them together 346,5921. It looks crazy, but if you separate it into 4-digit blocks, it's actually very systematic. But if you want to be fluent, you need to practice. Now let's look at some common mistakes. Many beginners say 16. That sounds logic. It doesn't influence people's understanding. But in Chinese, we like to say when 10 comes first, we usually drop 1, so 16 is simply 16, not 16. However, when 10 is not the first place value, we keep 1. For example, 212. Don't remove this 1, otherwise 212 sounds weird. Rule 2. 2 and 2. 2和2. I know you heard it long time ago. Now let's arrive at one of the most confusing topic. When should we use each one? A simple rule is this: when you are counting, reading full number, years, or doing math, use 2, 1, 2, 3. However, before most major words, before 百千万亿, native speakers usually prefer 2, 200, 2000, 2万, 2亿. You heard this much more often in daily conversation. Later in another lesson, I will explain all these exceptions, but this rule alone will already make your Chinese sound much more natural. Rule 3. 零. Another common mistake involves 零. Suppose a number has several missing places values. Many learners keep ending 零. Do not do that. Chinese only use 1, 零, 1, 0 for consecutive empty positions. For example, 250,0026009. Notice how 1 0 can represent several missing digits. That's very important reading rule. Numbers above 1. Once numbers become larger than 1, always divided them into 4-digit groups. For example, 250,4900. Now try to read it continuously without grouping, always think in group of 4. That's how native speakers process numbers. Okay, now can you try to read 430,000? Remember, Chinese groups by 4. Let's come to years, IDs, phones, and numbers. Years, room numbers, ID numbers, and phone numbers are not read using place values. Instead, Chinese read every digit individually. 2010年 2010年 今年是2026年 1315房间 If you learned Mandarin in mainland China, you may also hear 1 for the digit 1 in phone numbers or room numbers, like 110, 1315. But in Taiwan, people usually just say 1. By the way, I'm from mainland of China, but I'm also familiar with Taiwan expression. Let's quickly review a few mistakes. 16, not 16. 10,000, not 100,000. 100,005, not 100,005. 212, not 212. If you can avoid these mistakes, your Chinese numbers will already sound much more natural. Here are some practice. Can you read them in Chinese? You don't need to be fast. Slow and steady. It's all right. If you're still around the beginner level, you can actually stop here. Everything we learned so far is already enough for your daily conversation. But if you an intermediate learner, don't leave yet, because now we are entering the part that many textbook either skip or explain very briefly. Let's know fractions, decimals, percentage, multiples, and finally how native speakers express approximate numbers. By the way, beginners, you can also join to see how it works. Doesn't hurt. Fractions, 分数. Let's start with the structure. Fortunately, Chinese fractions are actually much easier than English. In English, we say 1/4, 3/5. The denominator changes. The number later stays in front. And sometimes the words themselves change. Chinese doesn't do that. Chinese always follows exactly the same formula. Denominators plus 分之 plus lumerator that's it. 1/2 1/2 1/4 1/4 3/5 5/3. Notice something interesting. The order is completely reversed compared with English. English say 3/5. Chinese literally say Chinese literally says out of 5 parts, take 3. Once you understand this idea, every fractions become easy. How about 半? Sometimes in daily life we say 苹果它只吃了一半. We don't say 苹果它只吃了1/2. I mean, it's right, but it sounds weird. You also heard 半个 and 半斤. You don't say 半个猫 or 半只猫. Actually, it may happen to some kinds of the cat. If you look at me at light, if you travel light, you can only say half. Just a joke. Remember, the structure is denominator plus 分之 plus numerator. We don't say 1/2个猫哦. Now let's practice. 12的1/4是多少？12的1/4是多少？告诉我你的答案。Tell me your answer. Next, let's talk about decimals. Chinese decimals are even easier. The rule is simply whole number plus 点. For example, 0.5 246.7308. Notice that after 点 you never say place values. You simply read each number. 7308. Exactly like reading a phone number. Easy. 7308. Here is a fun fact. The character 点 appears everywhere in Chinese. It can mean a decimal point. It can also mean time. 现在几点? A dessert. 甜点 to order food. 点餐 or simply a little. 慢一点，快一点。One character, many meanings. Welcome to Chinese. Oh, I forgot. 扫码点餐. If you order food in China, 扫码点餐. Now let's learn something that confuse almost every Chinese learners. 倍, which means times. 5倍 means 5 times. Simple enough. But here is where people make mistakes. Chinese distinguish between being several times something and increased by several times. These are not the same. Suppose your salary was $1,000. Now it's $3,000. In English, you might casually say it increased 3 times. But in Chinese, it is more precise. If you say 是3倍, it means your final amount is 3 times the original. 1,000 becomes 3,000. 1000变成了3倍. However, 增加了3倍 means you added 3 times the original amount. 1,000 plus another 3,000 equals 4,000. This is one of those details that even advanced learners often miss, so be careful. Like 是多少多少倍. Originally you only have 2 cats, now you have 10 cats. 现在的猫是原来的5倍. But if you use 增加了, 那么我说原来2只猫现在增加了4倍, now 现在是10只猫. When Chinese people talking about growth, Chinese usually use 倍, but when they're talking about reductions, they often switch to fractions. For example, 销量增加了1倍 or 今年增加了2倍 increased by 2 times this year. Now it's 3 times the original. 这个月减产1/3 Productions decreased by 1/3 this month. I don't know why this is their habit. Chinese may prefer to say prefers 减少了一半 not 减少了1倍. So increases and decreases are expressed differently. It's another example of Chinese organized numbers differently from English. Question time. 3的10倍是多少? Do you know the answer? Let's come to percentage. Now this is from the financial news. You know, if you want to do business in China, this is important. 高盛研究部在2026年1月5日发布了中国2026年展望探索新功能报告，预测2026年中国实际 GDP 增速为 4.7%。Well, GDP 增速为 4.7%. Yes, this is percentage. How about 99.9% in Chinese? Clever, you may say 99.9%. Yes. The word order for reading percentages in Chinese is the exact opposite of English. In English, you read the number first and then the percent sign, 99%. In Chinese, you have to read the percent sign first, 百分之, followed by the number 99. Sorry, 应该是 99.9. There is misspelling, but I don't want to change it. You know, I'm lazy. Now, we will arrive at the approximate numbers. It's also my favorite topic. This is where numbers start sounding much more natural. I want to, by the way, not everybody can encounter these situations unless you have a proper interaction with Chinese people. You may hear them. So, really beginners, you really can give up here now. But I don't mind if you really want to know. 2334. This first pattern is probably most common. Like 这里有几只鸟? 这里有几只鸟? How many birds are there? Oh, maybe somebody tell you 这里有3只鸟. And you may also heard, 这有2、3只, 这有2、3只鸟. They just don't want to tell you. Those they place 2 consecutive numbers together form smallest to largest. You say 2、3个、4、5个, but except 9 and 10 and 10 and 11, they can't be paired directly this way. Because 10 functions as both a number and place value will cause confusion, so only happened between 1、2、3、4、5、6、7、8、9. For numbers above 10, keep the tens place constant and combine the ones place. For example, 12个、12、3个、18、9个。教室里有多少个学生？大概有12、3个吧。For whole tens, hundreds, thousands, you can say 1、20个、2、300个、2、300个、1、2万。Like say, 你等了多久？我等了2、3个小时。Sometimes you may hear 3、5天. This is strictly limited to traditional idioms. 3、5天 and 180 are fixed expression. It simply means 3 to 5. You can't replace it with 6 or 5、7. Just memorize them. I can't give you a logic explanation. For example, 通常热门餐厅至少需要提前2、3天来预定位置。 Usually popular restaurants require booking a table at least 2 or 3 days in advance. I don't know it's 2 or 3, but just general days. 由于台风的关系，包裹可能会晚到3-5天。So this is uncertainty. I can't tell you the exactly time. You just keep waiting. Now we will come to 来 and 多。来 means around close to the number, could be slightly more or slightly less. 多 means more than or plus the numbers, strictly higher than the base number. For example, 30来人could be 29 or could be 32, 33, can't be 35. 30多人 more than 30 people, always from 31 to 39. Now let's do a little practice. 这里有几只猫 Very easy, right? 这里有3只猫哦，这里有2-3只猫 But 这里有多少只猫？20来只哦，20多只 Both are acceptable. 两个都可以说。We don't have time to count cat. Have to continue. What you should remember is for number between 1 and 10, or continuous units, time, weight, or ness, the structure would be number plus major word plus 来多 plus 让3块来钱3块多钱1个多小时 Category B for numbers ending in 0, 20, 100, 3000 extra. Structure would be number plus 来多 plus major word plus 让10来个人100来个人50多棵树 Pay attention to the order. The structure is different. I know you're still a little bit, you need time more to digest, but my point is not waiting for you. You can watch it later. 左右 indicate a range of plus or minus some quantity. Structure would be number plus major word plus 左右18岁左右 means maybe 17 or 19 已经左右 Unlike 来左右 is perfectly neutral. It doesn't suggest whether the real number is higher or lower. It simply means approximately. And then we also have 前后 and 上下. Here would be a simple way to remember. 左右 can apply to time, point, time, duration, physical measurement like weight, like temperature. But 前后 exclusively for specific point in time. Date example 20号前后6点半前后元旦前后新年前后上下used for age weight for example 80岁上下5公斤上下今天40度左右今天的气温是40度左右 Today's temperature. Now we finally come to the end.Idiomatic use of 几 and 两 Most people know that it means how many. That's true, but native speakers use it in another way. 几 can also means a few. For example, 快看，这里有几只猫？可能有4-5只吧。我们什么时候结婚？结婚这件事过几天再说吧。过几天 is often used as a polite way to postpone a discussion without giving a firm commitment. 过几天再说吧 maybe he doesn't want to get married anymore. 那本书你看完了吗？没呢，我才看了几页。Here 几页 emphasize the progress is still quite limited. 今天和您聊得很高兴，我先走了，过几天再聊。It was great talking with you today. I will get going now. Let's try to again in a few days. It's a social ethic. Maybe you will never talk to him again. I think this apply many language and cultures, right? And then 两 Yeah, beginners are quite familiar with it. Literally meaning two. When we come to oral Chinese, it means a small unspecific amount. Compared with 几, it's a casual tone. It's a polite suggestion. 这两天小王有点不舒服，他想请几天假。这两天 recently, what literally means 2 days. 今天的同学聚会里一定要喝2杯。Oh, you have to drink a cup of drinks. A friendly invitation, not exactly 2. Maybe if you encounter a friendly Chinese, they may just invite you 喝2杯，来喝2杯。过几天再说吧。Let's talk about it again in a few days. The exact time is intentionally left vague. 喝2杯 Come on, have a cup of drinks. Sounds warm and inviting rather than literally requiring exactly 2 drinks. 我学了4、5个月的中文，却只会说几句中文。Yeah, I've learned Chinese for a couple of months, but I only speak several sentences. It's normal. 我只学了2、3天的中文，就能认10多个汉字了。Oh, only a couple of days, you already can recognize more than 10 Chinese characters. Congratulations. This video takes so long time. I'm so tired. 我太累了，我想休息2天。Okay. 我们看2只猫吧。This is really tired. Remember those patterns, it will help you anyway. Bye bye. For Chinese numbers expression, there are more content, but I think 99% of the Chinese learners will not encounter them, and I don't want to make your dizzy mind even more confused, so I will save it. So I always claim that it covers 99%. 我要休息2天了，拜拜。